Welcome to Dating Deja Vu, the podcast where we talk about your patterns, your pitfalls, and your personal growth in modern dating. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, marriage and family therapist and dating and relationship expert. And in this episode, we're doing another Deja Vu. And as promised, we are focusing on Love is Blind Season 8 Minnesota style. I'm going to break down some of the relationships, both good and bad, some of the healthy versus unhealthy things that I saw. So if your dating love life looks a lot of bit of the same, it might be deja vu, but it also might be you. So let's figure it out together. Hey, Deja Crew. We have another Deja Vu episode. And as I had told you, we are focusing on Love is Blind Season 8. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to try to stay as focused as possible. I did not write any notes for this, which I normally do. And I put them over here and you'll see me kind of read off of my bullet points. So stick with me. We're going to go into it. So the first couple that I want to focus on is Ben and Sarah. Now, in the previous couple episodes, I have touched on this. And, for Ben and Sarah, they seem to have a lot of things in common, which is great. Like, that's what we want. But as I mentioned on the boundaries episode, there are certain non-negotiables that I want you all to have for yourself and realize that it can be really difficult to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't have the same. Now, I'm going to full disclosure tell you, when I met my husband, he was registered one way and I was registered the other way. And for him, it was interesting to me because like the way he treated me and treated other people didn't really align with that. Now, over time, I've realized that number one, he gets it a little bit more because I'm Hispanic. My father is blind, so is disabled, right? I'm a woman. And he was able to like first-handedly see like where the difference is from a, Caucasian white male who grew up in a country club environment. And over time, it's kind of funny how we've kind of like met in the middle, which is wonderful. But that's not the case for everyone, especially nowadays. Honestly, that was over 10 years ago when we met, where people were less split on things, right? And divided. So if you have things like you are an advocate for the LGBTQ community, you really believe in women's rights to choose or their rights towards their body, if you believe that equality is a thing and that everyone should have equal rights, and the person isn't necessarily telling you no, that's not true, but they're also not validating that or sharing a similar opinion, that's a big red flag. And I applaud Sarah because obviously she saw other things that were important to her. But let's face it, she said, oh, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about the whole, all the episodes. So keep that in mind. She found this out in the pods and still got engaged to this man and brought it up several times. Now, the interesting thing about Ben is like he has a girlfriend who is gay, like a friend. And like that would be the easiest thing for him to say, like, no, I have girlfriends that are gay, because Sarah's whole struggle was her sister is lesbian. And, he didn't give any sort of like, he kind of skirted around the issue, right? Kind of skirted around it, didn't really have a stance. And that's not a flaw to him. But if you are very clear in your stance and they are not, that's an issue, right? That is an issue. And not being able to have a stance on that and almost making it like it doesn't matter to me, that's an answer. Because, being privileged to not having to even look at how that affects other people is a kind of stance in itself, right? Now, for me, I try to not watch the news. Literally, I was recording my other podcast and she goes, "Oh, we're like bombing Yemen or something like that." And I was like, "What?" US strikes dozens of Houthi sites in Yemen as broader campaigns begin. So I didn't watch that, right? So as I'm saying this to you, I personally get my information on TikTok. Um, but I try to stay away from the news right now because my stance is so strong and I'm seeing things that are against my stance that I follow people that I can promote to help hopefully get things going in a different direction. But I might not know the current news on something like that, but I know my stance on things like equality and LGBTQ rights, all those things. Like I know my stance on that. So Sarah goes ahead, gets engaged, meets Ben. They're very cute, very lovely couple. And, as time went on, she was very open, she went to church, even though that wasn't something she wanted to do, it seemed like. I shouldn't say that. She tried to understand his church and their stance on it. Now, could your church have a stance on something? I'm actually not going to say that. I feel like if your church has a stance on something and you're going to that church, then that says a lot about you. And she discovered that their stance on the queer community was not one that she stood with. And that ultimately led them to not get married. Now, they talked about how they tried to date afterwards. And I want to just point out a process here. Ben he didn't say anything with his chest. He didn't stand in his truth really about anything. That's a process I want you guys to pay attention to because even afterwards, and yes, he had receipts and yes, you could see maybe that obviously there was a communication issue somewhere, and he very much thought they had broken up before she moved to Nashville. She's saying that that's not true, whatever. He just seemed to not be very clear. And for her, that sounded very rehearsed. I don't think it was rehearsed. I just think you're dating someone without a backbone and you're not paying attention to that. Maybe he's a people pleaser and he's going to tell you what you want to hear, even though that's not what he wants. And ultimately, that is going to cause issues with communication. And that's a process I want y'all to pay attention to. Like, are they not even trying to, not that people need to push back, but are they always agreeing with me? Like, are we that compatible? Because even like, what are their names? Taylor and Daniel, like they still had conflict, but they handled the conflict well, right? Especially around the texting, like, did you follow me thing. So that's something I want you to pay attention to. If people are constantly agreeing with you or cultivating a response that seems too geared towards appeasing you and doesn't necessarily sound like they have like a true belief, then you have to decide what you want to do with that. Because I personally, even though my husband, his whole thing is, finances, he's a finance guy and he has a true belief in that. And as a business owner, there are some beliefs in that I understand, but also I'm a giver. I understand what it means to receive government funding. Again, my dad was blind. I did receive Social Security as a child because of his disability. He received funding for how he put dinner on the table from the government, right? So I also see from my own personal perspective that there's a lot of good that we can do with helping others, but that's my stance. And, I don't put him down for when he has a different stance, but, as he's learned a little bit more, he's been a bit more open to it. So that is Ben and Sarah. Let's talk about Dave and Lauren. So, Dave shows up in the pods and his protection is cocky. He almost, won't allow women to see him in his vulnerability, even though they're not looking at him. It's what's wrong with you. And of course he's joking and maybe that's his banter, right? And he's just kind of has that dry sarcasm or dry humor. But from the get-go, if you're not trying to make someone comfortable, you're actually making them uncomfortable, which usually means you're uncomfortable with yourself. Anytime we project on others, it's just something that we feel in ourselves, even if we don't think that it has anything to do with us. When you see, when you get upset about something with somebody else, it's usually because you lack that thing in yourself. Or in his case, he probably was very uncomfortable. Of course, it's a nerve-wracking situation, but this coming up with this idea of like, oh, I'm going to ask these off-wall questions. I love some banter. I love dark humor. But if that's my first like exchange with you, that's going to be off-putting even for me. Okay. I mean, I used to work in child crimes with the Phoenix Police Department, and the humor we had helped us all get through. Other people would think we were crazy. Um, so that was the first thing. Now, I'm not going to get into the pods per se. I'm going to talk about the thing everyone else is talking about. Dave found out through his friends that Lauren was hooking up with a guy before she came on the show. Now, what we don't find out till later is they had a week to get their lives together once they knew they were going to go on the show. 1 week. So she doesn't know if it's going to be 5 weeks. She doesn't know when it's going to be. And she's hooking up with this dude. Now, I'm sure if we picked apart her hooking up with this guy, she probably saw a lot of these red flags because it turns out he kind of created this story, made it seem like they were dating, like he was the victim in it. He did this weird thing where he made, these pictures that look like he was on the show. He was talking to producers, but he was not casted for the show. This is Mystery Man. The problem is that rather than asking, I mean, he asked her about it and she gave her truth. Her friends validated her truth. I saw him a week before. I believe they went and got frozen yogurt. And I think they had hooked up like 1 or 2 weeks prior to the show starting. Now, keep in mind, I don't know how long they're in the pods, but I'm just going to put together they were not together, her and this dude, for at least a month, right? Because you have to go through the whole pod situation first. So finally, they get to Honduras and he gets his phone back, and it's just actually not in Honduras. Afterwards, he gets his phone back and it's, you have a boyfriend. A boyfriend. So you believe that you have know this woman so much, her heart, her values, her character, that your ass got on a knee and asked her to marry you, right? But you don't trust her. So you say you love her, but love is trusting somebody. That's part of it. You don't trust her enough to believe her story. You'd rather believe your friends and this dude and your fucking sister. We'll talk about that in a sec. So she there was no way that this girl was going to win. He had already believed it in his mind. And a lot of people were saying like this was his out, but out for what? She's beautiful. She has a, kind heart. She's patient. Even when he was coming at her, she wasn't criticizing him or stonewalling him. She even asked him to stay with her even after he made her uncomfortable. Lots of green flags there. Green. So a lot of people said like, oh, he was just trying to find an out. I personally believe that that is true, but not because of Lauren. It was because I think Dave, someone who's lost his mother early on, has a completely enmeshed relationship with his sister. There's probably, I mean, if your sister is dictating how you are in relationships and this show and saying, I don't want this to happen, I don't want that, like very controlling, you probably feel like relationships are like that, where it's very controlling, can't get too close, right? I can't let people see the true me, because his sister obviously needs to be involved, meaning that Dave can't trust himself. So if I can't trust myself and my sister has to tell me everything to do, that's a very unhealthy relationship. And he kind of showed that, like that enmeshment. And that's what I think he was trying to get out of, is that he probably had a really healthy person in front of him, and that felt foreign to him. So he went with this story. And of course, because he has the enmeshed relationship with sister and she's Bible, he believed her and the friends. And guess what happened? At the reunion, he says, I found out this guy was a crock of shit. I feel terrible, this, and that. And he silenced Lauren. She didn't have a voice. She basically did what probably he's used to in his relationship with his sister. He spoke for her. He chose her truth and he went with it and made it a whole issue. That issue was a non issue. Now, let me say this. I understand that there's been other people on the show who have had partners and they just went on the show to become famous. But she had her friends say, no, she was with us that night. Like, that's not even true. She was willing to sit down with his friends and hash it out. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of confidence. And he would not allow for that because if that was true, her truth was true, then he would have to let it go, right? It should have been a non issue. It should have been a conversation like, look, this is what happened. I don't have a relationship with him. You can call him right now and I will call him out on it. Like, we are not together. And they all look like idiots now because they believed a complete stranger over what could have been probably not a great partner or relationship. She is a great partner and she'll end up with someone who understands that. So the sister relationship completely enmeshed. She obviously took on mom role when mom left and didn't have the emotional capacity to do so. So you can see how it sounds very dependent and very controlling, where my sister, my sister, my sister, my sister, my sister. I didn't even say my husband's name that much. And he's like the person for me. Very lacking boundaries. I won't be surprised if his sister, when he does gets married, is the momzilla of the wedding and kind of trying to dictate everything. So that is that. I'm not going to get into the Meg, Mason, Alex, and Madison thing. Honestly, I think it's stupid. You know, I've heard Madison speak on a variety of podcasts. I've heard Alex speak. I've heard Meg and Mason talk on the reunion. Honestly, I think Madison was reaching because she comes off in a certain way. So I think Alex was talking to her in that way. Now, there's been some shit coming out that he's kind of, he's up there with Diddy and pedophile and all of that stuff. So I don't even want to get into that, to be honest with you. I think everyone is better off not being together. The next one I want to talk about is very quick because I want to get into the healthy relationship. So we want to end on a good note is Joey and Monica. Now, I don't actually want to talk about the relationship. I want to talk about her relationship with her sister. Holy fuck. I have never seen insecurity so vividly on my screen that her sister tried to sabotage that marriage. Now, of course, the marriage didn't end up working for whatever reason. I don't fucking care. The sister said, it should be me. You don't even like him, trying to talk her sister out of it. Now, Monica liked him. There was just that lack of connection that they both seem very guarded. They both seem very Midwest in that they didn't want to ruffle the feathers and almost like they couldn't speak their truth. And I think that was a disservice, like I think she would have spoke her truth if she knew it was safe to do so, but he did not provide that. So the sister very much tried to sabotage that relationship because she was insecure about not having been married. And now her younger sister of 4 or 5 years, whatever it is getting married. I know we can't choose our family members, but we can choose how they influence us. And if I'm telling someone that I went on this experience and I met someone, do I think that Love is Blind works? I do. There are a lot of relationships that are still together to this day because of that intimate connection, that emotional connection without having to see the person and getting to know someone in a way. Now, it does kind of throw out a lot of the boundaries that I talk about, but it's in this kind of safe environment. It's an experiment, right? So people do experiments on LSD and it's in a safe environment. So, for Monica to come in and be like, this is the guy. Like, and he was very nice. He was very nice. He did the stupid song and dance. But she was like, oh, he's acting. She made up an entire story about Joey after about 10 minutes of meeting him. And that had nothing to do with Joey. That had nothing to do with Monica. It had everything to do with the fact that she's still single. And I'm curious to how that plays out in her dating and relationship life, right? She's so wanting to be the pick me girl that I'm probably guessing that that's why she's single. She probably is one of those love addicts that pushes and pushes and pushes. People pull away and she ends up by herself. I get that vibe. I get it because she already chose the insecurities for Monica, which she probably chooses for herself and projected that onto Monica. Luckily, it sounds like Monica didn't like that, didn't really influence her. It was more the fact that Joey wasn't sharing his feelings. And I think that is just something to be aware of in your life is, are there people who are trying to sabotage my relationship because they've sabotaged every single one of theirs? And if those people are around you, set that boundary. Or if you have to, it might be time to walk away from that person. Now, it's hard when they're a family member, but I mean, I'll share something like, I don't know why my mom had such an issue with my husband. My father did not. My husband, again, comes from a more affluent background. And my mom has a story about people. She's made up a story about people who have money. Even me, now that I've been more successful in my businesses, it's, oh, you're so rich now. Like having financial freedom is a bad thing. And even to this day, the other day we are in the hospital with my dad, and the nurse comes in and she goes, oh, that's my daughter, Christina, and her husband, Mark. Whereas my dad would say, that's my daughter, Christina, and my son in law, Mark. Right. It's almost as if like she still doesn't accept him, which is really sad because she accepted the fixer uppers because I feel like almost like she needs to be needed and Mark doesn't need shit from her. Mark actually provides a lot for her that those guys would never do, but she still doesn't see it. So I get it. All right. Last one. Taylor and Daniel. Very cute. Honestly, they connected in so many areas of their lives. The one thing that I thought was the funniest, guys, was when they were sitting there after the weird conversation about him following her, and they were asking for the phone for them to take the phone away, and they both go Bueller. And I think in that moment, she was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" That was not something that was on her social media or anything like that. And I was watching an episode of AD's podcast this morning, and you know, she said, I probably did see his profile. Like we have the same people, right? And on your For You page, that could be there. And she probably did see his profile. But, what I loved about this is that they went right in and he was not afraid to talk about the quirky things like the Christmas stuff. And she's got the Taco Bell tattoo on her lip. Like that's hilarious. They slowly but surely let their guard down. I honestly think they're such a beautiful couple. There's just the way that they handled that conflict was brilliant. I watched that and I said, these are two secure people. These are two secure people. There was no like over apologizing. It was just like, how do I show you this? And she said, well, I have the unfollow me app. I'm going to look at it. And he wasn't there. And that to me, that patience that they had for each other, there was no criticizing, there was no stonewalling or withdrawing from the relationship. It was, we're having a hard conversation. This is my belief. Is this true? No, it's not true. And how can I help support you in understanding that this is not true? Or what can I do to kind of make you feel more confident in this? So that was the first sign. I was like, yes. And then the Bueller thing, right? And then over time, one of the things I saw with them is she invited his mom to her dress fitting. And that's when I knew that they were going to get married because nobody else did that. And that takes a lot to invite the other person's mom. My mother-in-law was at a dress fitting with me in Pittsburgh, and I thought that was going to be my dress, but then I found another dress over the whole thing. So I wanted her to be involved in that, but they live in another state, right? And the way my husband and I had a very quick engagement because we wanted to get married on the date we got married, because that was actually the day we met. And the day we met was the day his parents got married. So we made that our wedding date. But just the ability, like having both of the parents meet each other, that's a big green flag. Like, we're doing this together. We need to both be on the same page. And I was listening to my favorite podcast, and they were kind of talking shit about them. Like, they were like, oh, in competition or whatever that looks like. Now, yeah, when you get married, you have to kind of figure out what balance looks like. Luckily for me and my family, on Thanksgiving, we decided no longer to do dinner. And my mom just made a Thanksgiving breakfast that basically took all the Thanksgiving foods and made them into a breakfast food. That way we had a breakfast. And then if we had to go, at the time I was with somebody else, we had to go to that parent's house, we would do that for dinner. And that worked out well. So just the knowing how strong their feelings were with the families, their individual families, and then wanting to bring those families together, to me was pretty amazing, because your family's going to see through shit too, right? As long as they're not projecting on you. And they just seems she comes off to me as someone who's done her own work. He comes off to me as someone who's just been a genuinely nice human. I think she's a nice human too. But you know what I mean? I feel like she has realized, and obviously she has a wonderful relationship with her family. They seem to come from very secure places, whether they've done the work or not. And it was just always there. Very secure places. And knowing what true love feels like, and having respect for each other and patience, having that camaraderie and fun, right? They're very playful. Like, I was watching their like photos of them over the past year. And, it just goes to show that he might be a short king, and that might be exactly who should be there for you, or be the person for you. Don't not meet somebody. They may be very attractive, but maybe they're not 6'5". Go for it. At least see, right? You'll know pretty quickly, and then you can not see anymore. You have that choice. Like, not all in or all out. Get out of your comfort zone. I did. I dated all the swaggy white boys who played the sports, or they were good dancers, or whatever that looked like. And they were not for me. I found my collared shirt, and not like a golf shirt. He would never. Collared button up, J. Crew wearing Banana Republic baby, and very calm, very quiet. I should say very quiet, because he now gets out of his shell, because that's how we complement each other. Very attractive. But honestly, if I looked at Mark and I looked at myself, I wouldn't know he was attracted to someone with brown hair. I would assume he was attracted to someone with blonde hair, right? I would just make that story up for myself and not even go talk to him. So, end of the story. Put yourself out there. If he's 5'9" and you're 5'5", he's still fucking taller than you. Okay. Get over it. If he's older than you, younger than you. Now be careful with that one. Be careful with that one. I've dated someone younger than me, and I was ready for marriage, and they were not. But again, that's where the conversations come into play, right? That's the getting to know you phase. Understand, like, this is a non-negotiable. Like, this is what I'm looking for. But put yourself out there, guys. If you're a dude and you've always dated bombshells and they've always been toxic and crazy to you, maybe it's time to date a girl who's a bit more less fake looking. It's so fucked up. You know what I mean? So that's that. All right. If you guys haven't already, please make sure you are following us. I need some reviews, guys. Please review this podcast. It takes nothing but 30 seconds to do it. We've got some followers on our Instagram, Dating DejaVu Pod. You can also find us at the same name on YouTube, so you can watch me. If you know someone who is a big Love is Blind fan, please send this over to them. And I want you to comment below who was your favorite couple and why, so we can get some more comments and get this out to more people. Because remember, the more people that hear this podcast, the more well-rounded of people they're going to be out there, and that is only going to help you find your person. So that is the recap. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know the next episode or the next series you want me to watch. I did watch Temptation Island, as I mentioned, but I've already kind of touched on all the things there. Actually, I'll do one on that too, because that's just crazy. And again, I want you to remember, it might be deja vu, but it also might be you. Talk to you later.